Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're weaponizing Dumbo.
That's right, Johnny. You actually you hit the nail on the head there in your intro for a change. We are, in fact, weaponizing elephants. So it's another animal episode, Johnny. That's right, Johnny. We're weaponizing Dumbo. It's war elephants and the history of war elephants, the OG tank of the battlefield, and by battlefield I mean the olden medieval battlefield, because we are going. Yeah,
this is a long
way
time
back,
ago,
way
right?
back.
We're not strapping rockets to the elephants.
Well,
we're strapping people.
They will last
archers.
for a little bit. They will last into the age of the rockets, but we'll get there. We'll get there, Johnny. The war elephants. They're used by most countries in the medieval age. You've got China, India, Alexander the Great used them. The Carthaginians, and later even the Romans. After they saw how good the Carthaginians did with it, they were like, we kind of want that as well. But
we want in on that. We're in the habit of taking over people and their customs that we like, so yeah, why not elephants too?
Add it on in there.
Because they're not local, maybe?
Well, there is that. But then again, when Rome is at its height, what isn't local to Rome?
I guess, yeah, local
that's
is
kind of a
vague term, yeah.
But where'd they get the start? How'd that happen? Where we're at. So we got to start with, before you can weaponize an animal, you have to at least sort of domesticate it, and I use the word domestication in a very loose, like, these are wild animals that got captured and maybe bred in captivity, but they're still, at the end of the day, very much wild animals.
Yeah, that's tamed,
Domesticated,
domesticated. Domesticated, like, when you start to domesticate an animal, it loses its wildlife feature. Like, they domesticated fox, and they lost their big fluffy tail because they didn't need it anymore, and they started looking just like dogs or cats or whatever the hell they are.
Yeah, the
cat dog.
hybrid of both. Cat dog.
And so that's domestication. But yeah, they were taming wild animals and making them do their bidding in some way, shape, or form.
Believe it or not, elephant taming goes all the way back to 2000 BC in the Indus Valley civilization. So think of parts of India / like Nepal, that kind of region in the Middle East area. They actually were taming them as 2000 BC for farm equipment, which makes perfect sense. Big animal can pull lots of things. Animal. It makes plowing a hell of a lot easier when you do it with an elephant. But the ultimate question comes to how do you do it? Like, you got to how do you train an elephant? How do you
catch a young one, maybe? I don't know. Food?
Probably. A lot of that. And that's basically it. You tame an elephant in kind of the exact same ways that you break a horse. Yeah.
Okay. So they would trap it in some sort of enclosure.
And then once
once
the elephant's corralled and trapped into an enclosure, you start with small things like tie a rope around it. It gets tired. You tire it out, and then you tie a rope around its neck, and then you lead it around in a circle. And then you progressively stop the whole rope thing, and you start doing other things like tricks to where the elephant can lift its legs so it can lift you up onto its back. You start with you can't just throw something onto a horse's back. If you threw something onto an unbroke horse's back, the horse doesn't like it. So you got to start.
You got to start kicked in the face.
You got to start slow. You got to give it some pets. Give it some nice little soothing whispers into the ear, so to speak. Throw a blanket on its back and see what happens. Step back real quick after you throw the blanket. See what happens.
From above the corral, it's
repetition.
And so they eventually, just like we did this with basically every animal big enough. I mean, we did it with bison and horses and mules and or donkeys, I guess,
camels,
and mules because breeding, and like camels, anything that could pull something. I mean, I guess not rhinos. Like, maybe not.
I would imagine somebody somewhere probably has a rhino, but I imagine the rhino's just a bit just a touch more aggressive. Like that and hippos, they're probably just a
little more aggressive.
Just like why we never domesticated zebras is because they're just a bit too. They're kind of asshole donkeys, and they just don't like it. So
they're not smart.
You let that.
There's a certain intelligence threshold.
You find the animal
that they have to cross,
at least
get above.
Yeah, you find the animal that's at least sort of willing to work with you, and then you build up from there. The Chinese actually were, we've got records that they were domesticating, taming elephants as far back as 1600 BC, with some evidence saying that they might have gotten used in warfare back then. But the first actual documented use of elephants in warfare wasn't until 331 BC. I say that because that's also like...
That's shocking.
But this is Western evidence. I mean, I'm sure somewhere in the grasp...
Yeah.
You also got to remember that China...
Somebody took their elephant into a battle.
That region, that part of the Asian region is strife with a lot of conflict. Very, very diverse history of conflict, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that did happen and knowledge that did exist that got lost through the ages of multiple Mongol
Right, well, and
invasions.
you have to imagine if... Yeah, there was a lot of invasions, and you have to imagine the people who did have elephants... I mean, when their town, village, whatever's getting invaded, they're going to pop on their elephant and try to escape, probably. But, mow through some people on their way.
Yeah, I'm sure there were. But
that's kind of
for those at home who's playing along. The first official was 331, but it probably happened.
Yeah, it doesn't exist until the Western does it.
The white man does it. Pretty much.
Yep.
But the one thing about the Chinese is that the Chinese elephants, they don't. By 500 BC, elephants in China are mostly extinct because. Well, when the civilizations grew, they grew into the jungle regions where the elephants were, and then they captured them and didn't do the greatest job of breeding them, and then, it happens. It happens. Oopsies.
Yeah, well, and I'm guessing they're taking away the biggest, strongest
that
male
help,
bull elephants, and that's...
No.
They're herd animals. A male elephant will breed several females, so you're really, really screwing up the numbers there.
Pretty much. But elephants, once they do enter the war scene, they become the terrifying tank that lasts up until pretty much the gunpowder era really grabs a stronghold. And reasons for that is logical. It's a big-ass animal that's hard to kill. I mean, you put some armor on that thing, makes it even worse. There we go.
They're fighting with swords and spears and arrows and things like that. And, an elephant's going to take a whole lot of arrows.
A whole lot of damage before it gets
killed. And as it's taking those arrows, it's going to get mad.
So there are... obviously, you got a big tank. Now we're going to use it in war. So how are they used? Well, first, primarily, it's a truck. It's your modern Jeep. It is what is carrying equipment.
Transport.
Troops, equipment. A whole bunch of stuff. You can be pulling a hell of a lot of wagons. You can put a lot of weight on its back. It is a massive tool for any army to utilize in that regards. Now, when they get into the actual...
Well, and that's something that they could do without training them anything different than what they were already doing. They were trained to pull plows and stuff probably, and so now they're just pulling carts instead or transporting people. I'm guessing they built... those little baskets on the top or whatever. They could have 20 people or whatever inside.
There are two types of war elephants. You have the larger Asian and African plains war elephants that are big enough that they actually have wood platforms that are built onto their backs. You can deck them out in full armor. You can put wood platforms on their back. That platform would usually have about 3 to 4 guys on it. You usually have one driver. You usually have 1 or 2 archers, and then 1 or 2 spearmen, depending on how many how big the elephant is, how many people you can get onto its back. They are very good mobile archery platforms. You're way up high. You've got a good scope of the battlefield, and there's not a lot that can get you. And you're on an elephant, so, And
it gives you an added range, too, because you're shooting from a higher ground. So, because you're at least, 16, 20, probably 20 feet in the air on top of that platform. That's okay.
The other type of elephant that is used is a much smaller African forest elephant that really isn't. These are more like your circus elephants that you see that you have the one guy that's on the back. They're not quite big enough for a platform, and these elephants usually just have one rider. And tactically speaking, the elephant's goal there is to just trample. Not so much fighting, you're just a trample. Yeah,
they would put. I imagine they would also weaponize their tusks
they would,
in some way.
Yeah, put things,
spears,
whatever,
knives, swords, mace, whatever heads on it. Yeah,
deck them out in armor as well. You know,
that'd be a bad last thing.
And of course,
the
driver could also have a spear and go pokey down too. But he's not mobile.
Well, I'm sure he did to at least keep people down from trying to climb
take
and
him
take
off
over
or whatever.
the elephant.
So war elephants were used.
Press Y.
They have two different types of tactics on the battlefield. Defensive tactics. They were usually put around the center of the line, the army's line, and they are used to discourage cavalry charges because at the time of this conflict, medieval time, horses on the battlefield are like the knights in shiny. This is knights in shining armor, people. This is when the knight ruled the battlefield. So you want to protect your line as much as possible from heavy cav charges. Well, turns out horses don't like the smell of elephants and are scared of elephants, and so
they get spooked.
Good way to stop a charge is put an elephant there, and the horse will go, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
That's a good one.
You can't make me.
Good way to stop a charge. And then, of course, offensively, where they were battering rams. I mean, it's the same as a heavy knight. You run people over. That's your goal, and that's pretty much it for tactics. So now we got to get into the how well did they work? What are some downfalls? Because on paper, this sounds like it's an amazing thing. Like, why we should still be using elephants today? What could possibly go wrong? Well, the first thing is you got to. Elephants live for a very, 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 very long time. Actually, they have a lifespan very, very similar to humans. So an elephant's maturity doesn't really come until about 20-ish years old. So if you are farming elephants to raise for combat, you have a hell of an investment into that. Feeding, housing, training for 20 years.
Sure, but couldn't the same be said for men?
I mean, but you can breed, but Johnny, you can breed a hell of a lot more peasants than you can elephants. So a lot of times, elephants were actually captured in the wild, and then it was easier to capture an older elephant in the wild and train it than it is to just raise one from the ground up. The other big problem is they found out very early that female elephants tend to run away from male elephants when there is conflict around. So if they are scared, if there's loud noises and banging and fighting, they tend to go in the opposite direction of the males. So you can't really use the females in a combat role. So you're stuck with male elephants between 20 and 60 years old is your ideal. And now you're really limiting your weapon right off the bat in that regard.
Yeah, inventory is low.
The other big thing is that unlike a human that does not require, they require food and water. We both do. An elephant requires significantly more food and water, specifically water. An elephant can drink up to 40 gallons of water a day. They need at least 27 gallons of water. They can drink up to 40 gallons of water a day. So if you are on a long march, say over some mountains where there's water limited, you're going to have to carry a significant amount of water with you for the elephants. If you have an army of 100 elephants, you're talking about a small swimming pool full of water every day that you're going to need to give them.
Yeah, you're going to...
Every day.
Every day. You're going to have multiple elephants carrying nothing but that water to drink.
Yes. So there's another logistical issue of elephants. And then the other big thing is... but they're still wild animals. And so you can break it as much as you want, but at the end of the day, a wild elephant that gets stabbed a couple of times is going to do what it wants to do. Will it charge the enemy?
Yeah, and so...
will it charge and stomp all its own people?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So they weren't able to train them, hey, those are the bad guys, these are the good guys.
Yeah, not quite so much.
And so they got shot by a couple arrows and probably just started going mad at you and taking out all their own guys.
Yeah, there's that. So that's why every elephant driver, his most important tool that he carried with him was a spike and a hammer. So that way when the elephant, not if the elephant goes mad, but when the elephant goes mad, you can just
win.
You just
I hope he's good at that.
Glance off and
I hope
miss.
He's good at that job.
The elephant off even more.
Hits his thumb. It's a moving, giant, enraged elephant. You're trying to hammer a spike into a specific spot on his head. Because I imagine if you miss, it's an elephant, and it's just gonna grab you with its trunk and choke slam you like the
Yeet you off, maybe, yeah. Like, that's the other thing. I can't imagine that there were so many successful like how many drivers got knocked off the elephant and trampled. Like that had to have happened on a fairly regular enough basis.
Oh, of course, yeah, all the time.
So I decided, look, all right, we now got some obvious negatives. We now got some obvious positives of elephants. They were utilized from 331 BC all the way up into the 1800s. So there had to be some success.
So there was some success, otherwise they would have stopped.
How successful? So I went through, and I went through at least what I could find for documented battles where there were war elephants utilized, and I went through if both sides used the elephant, I just called a draw, ignored it. So I'm looking for where one side used an elephant and the other side didn't. How did they have an advantage?
Did they have an advantage?
And turns out, no. It was pretty much a 50-50 shot. Like, there wasn't really any. Yeah, there's many armies with elephants that lost as about as many that won. The Carthaginians, they seem to be the most effective, but then again, they still. I mean, several Punic Wars that didn't go their way.
I mean, they could have also just been by default a more effective army that just happened to be using war elephants.
So with the Carthaginians, Carthage, they did, Hannibal, he did try to march his army over the mountains and take Rome, which it worked. He was able to get the elephants over the mountain, lost half of them, so he had to capture some new ones on the way. You did catch the Romans by surprise, but at the end of the day, I mean, he didn't win the war, so.
Yeah, so, I mean. So they were moderately effective.
Moderately effective. We'll say at least
is fair.
It's a tool on a battlefield. It's not a secret weapon. It's not a guaranteed
probably
weapon. It's another tool. Another tool.
Yeah, probably just practice or work on breeding bigger horses.
Yeah.
And get up to draft horses, and then use 2 or 3 of those to pull your stuff when you need work done. And then you can separate them, and you have 3 war.
Horses reach maturity a hell of a lot faster than elephants. So,
and they're easier to breed. Yeah. I mean, it's a whole.
Don't take as much water, less food. Yeah, it's a lot easier.
But
I do want to talk about.
They're endurance animals, which is nice.
Yeah. I do want to talk about one specific battle, Johnny. The last battle that's well documented, where elephants were utilized. Johnny, it's
World War II,
1825. Not quite World War II. 1825 at the Battle of Danubyu.
Not far off, though.
It is the Battle of Danubyu. So the British Empire is doing its empire thing at this time. We're not surprised. They're going up against the they're going up against the Burmese Empire, and they're going to siege the Burmese Empire, or what's left of it, at the city of Danubyu. In an attempt to break the siege, the Burmese army is going to launch a counter-assault led by their war elephants, at which point the English army uses rockets and shoots rockets at the elephants. And those 17 war elephants don't they don't do so well against rockets. So
so how did they? So a rocket, like a fire?
No, this is
right?
This is like think of like a bazooka. This is an early bazooka. Yeah, you have a tube. Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the English were using at the time, but a similar device during the Civil War was a hail rocket, which is what us boys in blues liked. And basically what it is, if you take gunpowder, if you take black powder, and you get it wet and you let it to solidify in a block, it creates a rocket. I mean, just light the end of it, it'll go.
You make like black powder concrete
creates a rocket. Just instead of exploding, it burns from one end to the X, creating thrust. Yeah,
it just burns.
So what you do is you take that stick of black powder that's solidified into a rocket engine, and you shove that into a metal tube. And in the front of that metal tube, you have the explosive ordnance, which during the hail rocket could either be fuse. You light a fuse, and then you light the rocket, and you could get it to blow over and send shrapnel down on you. Or you could have an impact fuse where when that rocket hits, it explodes. Now, I know the way impact fuses work, there probably wasn't impact for the British. It was probably still using the whole old school, like, light a rick and guesstimate.
But I mean, that's going to work. Works. That's also going to scare the shit out of the elephants.
Even if you don't hit an elephant with a rocket.
Bonus, if they miss. Who cares?
We've, at least our generation, some of us had bottle rocket wars, and every time you got a bottle rocket shot at you, you tended to duck, right? So if you're an elephant, it's going to get out of the way of the rocket. So at the very least, stop elephant from charging.
And if Yeah, so I basically was making those types of cannon when I took my bike seat and duct taped the end of it, and then you'd light the bottle rocket and tap it in, and then you'd have a perfect like aiming device.
Yeah, but without the exploding warhead at the
to
end.
fire out.
Yeah.
Now, don't do that at home. It's not fun at all.
No, it's so fun to have bottle rocket wars, or when you take the Roman candles and they say don't aim at people, but then you aim at people anyways because it's hilarious. Pew! You can pretend like you're a magician.
Yeah, Roman candles are fun. And then the chaos when you took off the stick of the bottle rocket and lit that, and then you just threw it.
And then it was Russian roulette. Who knows where it's going?
Just threw it and hope for the best.
That's the way it was. Yep. Yeah, so anyways, that's elephants, war elephants used from 300 BC all the way up to damn near the Civil War. So yeah, let that until the United States existed. We existed. We well existed at this point when the last elephant was used for war.
We were getting ready to try to split in two at this point.
Yeah, we very much were.
That's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we talk about Freedom Land.